30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes, and then start the meeting, which I kind of imagine when I showed up, people would already be eating. I apologize that you haven't had a chance to eat yet. So, and I also apologize for being a little late. I was just at a meeting with what we're calling the Faculty Leadership Council, which was a group that was formed a couple of years ago. It's the president of AAUP, the president of the Faculty Senate, the head of UCF, Undergraduate Recruitment Forum, the head of Graduate Committee, and the chairpersons for the Council of Chairs, which in this case are Bill Baraklis and Armin Morsudian. And so we were just having a meeting trying to talk about the strategies that we want to help facilitate this year for us. So let me just say welcome back. Thank you for coming. I'm Mike Shea, for those of you who don't know me, and AAUP Union President for this chapter at Southern. And what I wanted to try to do was have several meetings this year, all of which you don't need to attend, but I would hope that you would try to get, the reason we're having several of them, maybe by virtue of using me as a person you ask questions of, and kind of have a discussion about things that facing us this year. But let me just begin with a slight, what kind of overview to give you a context in which we might speak. At the faculty retreat, which everyone was invited to, the last Friday before classes began, we had at the JCC, we built on ideas that we had had the previous faculty retreat in May of last year, which was also at the JCC, which was also open to everyone. And that meeting, there were a lot of ideas generated for things that had happened in the course of the past year and where we were headed for the 2010-2011 academic year. And in the past, when we've had a faculty retreat, we kind of waited a year before we had another one. And what happened was, the previous May, we came up with a lot of ideas and then didn't have another meeting until this past May and sort of never built on it. So what we did this time was, the ideas that were generated at this past May meeting, we started collecting, and John's been a big help in this, John Block in sociology, in terms of helping to run the group, facilitate the discussion, and also collate the information. And what we did at this past faculty retreat was we took the concerns that we had laid out the previous May and tried to group them. And what we saw were that there were three basic issues facing us rethink this year, and see what you think about all this. One is the big issue is the state budget crisis and how it affects CSU, the 4 CSU campuses. The sort of middle issue is how the chancellor and the system office have been, the decisions they've been making and the things they've been doing over the past year or so that have affected the 4 CSU campuses. And then the third issue was more immediate to Southern, which is our upcoming search for a president and our current, the fact that we have an interim president, we're going to need a search. Another issue on the horizon that didn't come up at the faculty retreat, but is of particular interest to all of us, I think, is that contract negotiations start, I believe, do they start next fall, Steve? Does anybody know? They start next fall, which means this year we want to start talking about the kinds of things that we want the union to negotiate. Just remember that we, with the union negotiations, it's a complex structure because, in a sense, we as state employees are all a part of CBAC, the State Employees Bargaining Coalition. And we're a small member of CBAC. But CBAC sort of sets a lot of the larger issues. That's the reason, for instance, we have the health care plan until 2017 that we do and things like that. The AAUP involves the 4 campuses, of course, and what we'll be negotiating is our contract that determines our pay and our academic issues that involve the CSU, but not state employee issues that sometimes are bigger than that. So just that helps to think about how much control we have. And then again, with the state, with the sorry, I'm lost here. With the contract negotiations that are coming up, even that is a question of how much the rank and file and how much the union leadership communicate about what we're trying to do. Many times the union negotiations sort of take on a life of their own that go beyond what faculty might think is a good idea. So again, I think the best thing there is to facilitate more communication about that process than maybe we've had in the past. So that's a fourth issue that's also facing all of us. But what we talked about the faculty leadership retreat were those three big issues. And I think you know from the statement I sort of made when I ran for AAUP president, as well as some of the things I said at the meeting we had that was similar to this in May, if you haven't heard directly or indirectly. I'm interested myself in trying to move forward on two fronts simultaneously that are somewhat antithetical. One front is to try to educate the public and the legislature more about what CSU does in the face of this crisis, how we can, I guess the only way to say this is minimize the damage that's going to be done to the CSU system, because it seems like damage is going to be done to every state agency because of the crisis that's facing us in 2012 that everybody says is this tsunami coming, unlike anything we faced before where there were givebacks and various fixes were much easier to come by in the past. And as much as you may not believe this or feel this, in the past, higher education has pretty much gotten a pass when there's been these really bad times in the state. We've had a kind of a protection that I think doesn't exist this year, according to people in the legislature that are and other people who are thinking about these things. So like everything's on the table now, and so it looks like severe cuts are coming, damage is coming. What we want to do is minimize it by trying to get the public to understand and the legislature to understand why it's disastrous to cut your investment in public education, public higher ed. So that's one front I want to move forward on. And in particular, I've asked Audrey Kerr, who's sitting here in the middle, to sort of be the person who will help us coordinate that event, at least with the idea of the messages we want to try to get out. Let me get back to what that program is in a second and say that the second front I think we need to move forward on at the same time, it seems to me, is to still call attention to what we might think or see as bad decisions or poor processes on the part of the BOT and the system office, which in a sense hurts us all, right? If they're talking about giving people raises and they're talking about giving retention bonuses for not firing, that looks like CSU is wasting its money. And I think one of the things we want to do is, at the same time that we talk about how good CSU is by talking about what faculty do in the classroom with students, we also need to say that some of the decisions by the leadership are not things that we would endorse or do ourselves. And so please don't tar us with the same brush when the things that are making the headlines are what most of us would probably agree are just bad decisions by again, unwise people. And to me, those are kind of antithetical messages that have to be given, but I think they're both important to help the public disentangle some bad publicity and bad choices in the CSU, and even including now we're kind of tied to UConn and some of the bad decisions made by their president. In public higher ed, that looks like a waste of money. We need to help the public disentangle that from how we really need money to do things other than to give administrators 10% raises.